Dear colleagues, journalists, we start our working day. The topic of the next briefing is European Visual and Decentralization Reform and Civic Society Development in Ukraine. Please welcome Henri Malosse, President of the European Economic and Social Committee.
So I will give you a short briefing just to remind you that the European Economic and Social Committee is the fifth European institution which represents the civil society. It's a democratic institution composed by 350 members coming from the 28 EU member states. Here it's a symbolic place, so just to remind you that we were the first European institution to take position during the Maidan. We are the first European institution. We invite 17th of January Ruslan Lijichko, which I met in fact yesterday evening. And she came to a plenary session with Mr. Barroso, and maybe you saw the picture where she had the Ukrainian flag, Mr. Barroso and myself, so we were the first, and after she went to your parliament. So as representative of a civic movement, we have always been on the side of the Ukrainian population to support reforms, transparency, fight against corruption. This was, of course, the past. I just wait for some of your colleagues arriving, but this was the past one and a half year ago. As you know, I was there in December. We were there during all Christmas time, and I had speeches here on the Maidan with Ruslan, with some others. After that, we came back in January, in the end of January, much more tense period. After Ruslan, I came to a plenary session. We were the first institution to ask for individual sanctions against Mr. Yanukovych and all the oligarchs and people around him. Now we came to a different time of history of Ukraine. As you know, after the tragic events of Maidan and of Kiev. I know what was the price for Ukrainian population. You can see here around, and people who unfortunately died. And now the annexion of Crimea and the aggression from Russia in the Donbass region, where we have, as European institution, of course, take a clear stand to support the integrity of Ukraine, to help as civil society all the refugees or people who have moved from Donbass, from Crimea and Donbass region. In the same time, I have always appealed for a dialogue with the Russian civil society. Unfortunately, now I'm not allowed to come back to Russia, where I had a lot of friends, but maybe you know, but I'm one of 89 European Union personalities who have been banned on the blacklist until 2020, at least, not allowed to come back to come to Russia, and this is clearly because of my engagement here and my engagement on the Maidan. Where I've never been aggressive against the Russian people, but of course we have, as institution, frozen our relation with the so-called civic chamber of the Russian Federation, which is very close to the Kremlin. But in the same time, we have continued to develop dialogue with the Russian civil society. I've welcomed some months ago the Pussy Riots. I've been in permanent contact with a lot of democratic activists. We opened 2 weeks ago the Euro-Russian Civil Society Forum, where I even asked the European Union to give positive gestures concerning the Russian population, government population, for example, to facilitate visa for mainly young people or other Russian people to come, to exchange, to develop contacts, because we have to fight against the propaganda. And here, as a media center, it's something I think important. I would just like to stress also that our institution was very proud some weeks ago to issue a report made by one of my colleagues. Indre, she's she's Lithuanian, concerning the Russian propaganda about the Ukraine crisis, where we urge the European Union institution and the countries to develop not a counter-propaganda, because I don't think that we can fight propaganda by another propaganda. This will be the worst thing. We have to not to use the same weapons, but by giving objective information here, of course, in the Western country, in Ukraine, but also to the Russian people. And one way is to develop exchange with them. So I made here a private visit during these 2 days, where I met several politicians, governmental bodies, and personality like the Patriarch Filaret and Ruslana Lizichko. And my assessment about the situation in Ukraine, of course, there is the political situation, the war, annexion of Crimea, the very dangerous situation, and in the Donbass, the tragedy of 1.5 million or even more people who have to be removed. But I will say that this is something that, of course, is in all our concerns and our minds. And we have to find solution. And solution, in my view, is just by combination of a hard lines against the Putin regime, but open arms to the Russian people for dialogues, because nobody wants a third world war, and it will never happen. So it's just by convincing the people and by establishing dialogue, people to people, that one day I hope Ukraine can solve this problem and restore its integrity of its territory. On the other hand, what worries me here is the economic and social situation of Ukraine. You all know that better than me, but this is something very sad. We as an Economic and Social Committee, we are very concerned about the lack of investment, and I urge the European Union just by good words are not enough, subsidies are not enough. They need to have more European investors to come here, and I'm welcoming back to Brussels or Paris, in fact, today, but I urge my colleagues, because I'm coming from the business sector, to encourage them to come here and to invest, because I think it's what Ukraine needs, it's investment. Ukraine needs also, I would say, example, ideas, not just to give to them lessons. It's easy to tell the people, don't do that, but it's more important to give some experience how the Ukrainian society can move to a real democratic society. That means to ban the oligarch from the political scene, which I think is an urgent necessity, because you cannot make in the same time business career as an oligarch, at the same time make politics, because this is the risk of clientelism and buying votes. You have to have more transparency in the business economic life, fight against corruption, make the real democratic reform. I can congratulate the Ukrainian authorities for the reform made recently in the police, or for example yesterday or 2 days ago the decentralization reform, which I support fully. I think it's a good move, but it's not enough, and I think the European Union needs to give not just money, but as I said, investment, bringing entrepreneurs here. Tourists can see in Kiev there is no tourists, there is very few investors, and this is a pity. To help the recovery, the growth, the economic development, and to give some good examples in fighting against corruption, which is an horrible disease that we all have, but it's known there is some instrument, there's way, transparency, digitalization, there is way to fight against independent judiciary system, there is way to fight against corruption, because we all have in Europe, in all the countries of the world, so there is a lot of experience how to deal with that, and to make economic and social reform, keeping in mind that the best victory for Ukraine will be if Ukraine has a better economic and social situation. Because this will be the victory against the aggression from the Russian Kremlin government, to show them
Для того, щоб показати, що Україна здатна і навіть без субсидій, використовуючи свої сили, але з інвестиціями зовнішніми реалізувати всі реформи і зробити успішну історію. А для того, щоб ця успішна історія була в Україні, я певен, що вони, скажімо так, якщо будуть декілька з них успішними, то вони будуть, так мовити, інфікують або цим успіхом усі інші. І тому хочу своє повідомлення спрямувати до вас. Я сказав би так, що частково я сподіваюся, можемо беручи до уваги політичну ситуацію і важку економічну, соціальну ситуацію, іноді, скажімо, якщо йдеться про життєві стандарти, про якість життя, все це питання дуже в першу чергу хвилюють людей. І якщо у Європі людей немає задоволення від рівня життя, то тоді ми не можемо навіть вести мову про демократію. Дуже дякую вам за увагу. Thanks a lot. Should you have any?
Inside Ukraine, as well as the European Union, there are discussions devoted to prolongation or not prolongation of sanctions against people connected with Viktor Yanukovych. As well, there are many discussions what to be with one of well-known oligarchs, Dmitro Firtash, and his businesses. What's your point of view?
I didn't get the second question.
The second question is perspectives of European businesses by Ukrainian oligarch Dmitro Firtash.
Yes. I personally think that sanctions against persons who have been involved in, I would say, violation of human rights, in violation of basic rights, including social rights of people, are legitimate. And I personally think that I'm against sanctions against a whole nation. I don't think a population has not to suffer, but the mistakes of their government, specifically in countries where there are not real free elections. So it's not really the choice of the people, or they don't have any other choice. But personal sanctions, I think this is legitimate. When you have a responsibility in your public life or business life, and I insist that business life too, when you are responsible as a politician to make your people suffer, to violate the basic right, you have to pay the price. And I don't think it's legitimate. I think it's legitimate, for example, if you see what happened in Germany. One of the reasons of the recovery of Germany is that they have, not the beginning, but in the 60s, 70s themselves, tried to get rid of the past. And get rid of the past means also to bring the main responsible, of course not the people who just were very modest level, but the main responsible to the court and to pay the price of their act. Concerning the question of business, I think really that business life is something that in the post-Sovietic area, unfortunately, business has been assimilated to mafia. Coming here, there is a restaurant whose name is Mafia. Assimilated to mafia, to smuggling, to pressure, to clientelism, buying votes. And I'm an entrepreneur coming from the business sector. I feel social responsibility. I don't feel as a mafia. I don't feel, and I feel this is something which kills the economic growth. Because the entrepreneur are social responsible person. Entrepreneur like you and me, we have a heart. We have to have ethics. I was previously, before being president of the European Economic and Social Committee, I was president of employers group, so business group, and we have developed a code of ethics. And I think introducing ethics in business life at all levels, it's a necessity. But I will add something also, as I mentioned. I don't think that, I think that you have in life to choose. Or you make business, or you are a politician. And I don't think that we can do that both parallel. Of course, you can have been a successful businessman and then enter in politics. That's totally correct. But mixing the two, in daily life, it's very dangerous because you can see the interference in public procurements I think in our country. For example, in France, we won't accept to vote for someone we had some experience. The experience of Mr. Marcel Dassault, you know, the man who built war planes, and he was condemned by the court because to be elected as a member of parliament, he bought the vote. So I think this is something very, very insane for real democracy. Everything should be transparent. When there is a political campaign, you should have, and I don't think you have enough, a clear law to avoid any. You know, I'm a candidate in election next December in my region, Corsica. And I can say the maximum amount of money I can give myself from my pocket or someone that can give me for my political campaign is 7,000 euros. It has to be declared. All the rest should be on public fund and transparent and not coming from any business or anything from private. This is very important. Separate business life from a political life.
Шановні колеги, в кого ще є запитання?
Are there any other questions? Esteemed colleagues, please introduce yourself. Volodymyr Polevy.
Have your own position on the special or even constitutional status of Donbass?
I will say that we don't, we have not been asked, but we have a sister organization with whom we share the building, the premises in Brussels, which is the Committee of the Region. And the Committee of the Region, my colleague, Mr. Marco Macula, President of the Committee of the Region, has been asked, I think by the European Union authorities, Mrs. Mogherini, and by the Ukrainian government, Ukrainian president, to give a stand. I personally, and this stand is, of course, but this question is the responsibility of the Ukrainian government. I myself, as I mentioned, I'm from Corsica. You know, you know that with Corsica and the Corsicans, and I will run for election. So the Corsicans seek for more autonomy. What we need, I think two elements to answer to you. First element is that nothing should be accepted which goes beyond the integrity and the sovereignty of Ukraine. And sovereignty and integrity means, integrity of the territory means foreign policy, means defense policy, and means some clear reference to the values. When you belong to a nation, Ukraine is a nation, you should have your common values. It should not be, for example, different standards for human rights if you are in the Donbass or if you are in the region of Odessa or Lviv. This is against any form, for me, of a republic. Republic, it's you share values and you have your integrity of your territory and you have one defense policy, one foreign policy. But for the other activities, like environmental decision concerning environmental, fiscal policy, sometimes education, respect of languages, which is, I know, it's a very sensitive issue. I'm fighting myself as a Corsican that the Corsican language should be recognized as, of course, beside French, which is our national language, but as a second language for Corsica. I'm fighting for that, and I think this is legitimate, that people who have the right to speak their own language, but in the same time, they should learn, and they should, of course, have part of their education in the national language. So I think we should have, and coming to the Donbass question, I think that that autonomy, a kind of autonomy, a kind of decentralization is a good thing, because there is a lot of things you can, democracy is not something from the top, it's something from bottom. You build democracy at the local level, municipalities, regions, this is where you can express the democratic life, express the wish of the population. And for that, if you have some identity in some region, you have to preserve this identity. I'm fighting for the identity of the Corsican people. But we belong to a French nation. That means that we recognize the French values. We recognize the principle of our republic, and we, of course, we will never ask to have, the foreign policy, the defense policy, the securities policy is under the responsibility of a nation, and also the social cohesion. For example, social cohesion between rich and poor regions. We cannot have a system where the rich region will keep all the money for themselves and don't give to the others. We can have a sort of repartition, sharing the burdens among us. But I think there is in the European Union a lot of, France is not the good example of that, but a lot of good examples where we should really well combine decentralization, autonomy, respect of the identity of a region, and in the same time to have a respect of a nation, its integrity, its sovereignty. And this will be my advice, and I know this has been the advice of the Committee of Region, to give his proposal to the Ukrainian government, that we can check with them to see in which countries, Austria or Germany or Italy, or you have different examples. And I think Ukraine has a tool of different good success stories in the way to strengthen the autonomy of a region without make weaker the state.
Колеги, в нас є час ще на одне маленьке коротке запитання.
We still have time for one very short question. There are none. Okay, thank you very much.
І нагадую, що наш наступний брифінг буде...
Our next briefing will take place in several